Hello and welcome. I'm Night's Angel, and this is just a Folf on the road. Thank you for joining me. Alright, but simply, until I can come up with something better to talk about, I'm just going to carry on with this whole writing spiel. Pretty much all the aspects of my methodology in writing. Again, I am not a published author. I'm probably, at best, a rank amateur. But, that being said, I'm just sharing my point of view, like so many others. So, put simply, today's topic is going to be about character development and world building. The reason why I'm doing two is because they're actually very closely tied. Put simply, when I go into world building, that's when I come up with the idea for the story. Okay, point A, point B. Well, beginning and ending. That tells me most of what I need to know. And I say most with good reason. Because that's how we're introduced to the character, or characters, and how everything concludes. In between that, you have the whole world. Sorry. One of the things about that is you have to generate a lore, a standard of living, and circumstance. What I mean by that is the lore is what is the mythology, what is the technology. Well, actually technology falls under circumstance. What is the standard of living that your character has? And most people actually play up the suffering hero. And I say most because I am prone to doing so as well. And what I mean by the suffering hero is your main character oftentimes has a problem that leads into the story. Like loss of family, loss of a home, loss of something that sets them on the journey. This can also be referred to as the point of no return. Meaning once you hit that point, there's no going. Once you write to that point, they can't turn around and go back. Sometimes it's really early in the story, sometimes it's really late in the story. It all depends on what's going on. But the concept is, when you reach the point of no return in your story, you have to make sure that your character or characters have the understanding that until either things are resolved or until they're dead, or any other, or one of a dozen other options that you can come up with, there's no going back. Pretty much no retreat. So, that being said, circumstance is an overall. It is the technology, it is pretty much it's your technology, your magic system, your whatever. Everything from the type of food they eat, to what the world is like, to how they communicate, how they do this, how do they do that. I'm generalizing. I don't know all of the terminology. Like I said, I'm a writer, not an author. There is a difference. Authors are published. Anyway, so you pretty much build on these three things. Okay, now how do we introduce your character? Okay, here's my methodology of creating a character. Make them perfect. I know it sounds stupid. Let's face it, the Mary Sue trope is overused. However, this is where it gets interesting. Keep this in mind whenever you write. You are both the greatest hero and villain of your story. Because you are the one that decides how bad things get. You decide how close to death your characters come. And at the same point in time, you decide how they get pulled back, how they recover, how they get back up. So like I said, you play the greatest hero and the greatest villain. Because you have to make the tough choices. And this plays into your character development. Like I said, make them perfect. Then, once you have an idea of what they're like at their best, drag them through the mud. Drag them through the mud, beat, batter, and break them, however you see fit. Because what you see in their state of perfection, even beforehand, and this is a little trick to keep in mind. When you do it this way, what you're actually doing is you're digressing your character. Because them in that perfect state, or that their best state, or whatever you want to call it, them at their best, their optimal state, is what you want the character to be at the end. And how to get them there is you have to drag them kicking, screaming, and bleeding back to the beginning. Now, overemphasis on that, but it's the idea that you start them off kind of same way you write a story. When you first introduce the character, and when you finally leave the character. You need them at certain points. Now, this actually can be worked in reverse. Pretty much you can digress your character in either direction. You can have them start off at their best and degrade, or you can start them off at their worst and rise up. But you want to know, what you want is them at their best at the end of it. At the end of it or at the beginning of it, depending on how you're doing it. And from there, the opposite end has to be them at their worst. Now, do I mean this and I don't mean this in the sense of you start them off at their worst. No. what you can, one of the things you can do, God, that is loud. Sorry, I'm traffic, as you can see behind me. So, my throat hurts a little bit, so there's that. But one of the things to actually keep in mind, when you write your character, you can actually start them off a little bit above. You can start them off before the switch up. What I mean by that is you can start them a little bit better. You can introduce them before the point of no return. Point of no return, depending on who the character is or how you're writing your character, is the breaking point. Them at their worst or at their best. And then from there, you go to the opposite end. And yes, at the end of it, you can actually reverse things a little bit to keep fairness. Like, nobody's going to stay perfect. Nobody's perfect, no one's going to be perfect. So what you can do is, after the finale, you can have them start degrading a bit. Not in the negative sense, but it's like they have completed their task. There's no greater challenge for them now. So they start dropping off. I mean, we're not running off of DBZ logic here. Although, depending on your writing style, it may work. I mean, you can even do this with side characters. One of the projects I have going on is actually a full story. Probably going to be kind of long, but it is multi-perspective based, meaning X number of characters have their own story. Will it be long? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But you also have to keep in mind how you're going about doing that. You want to limit the number of characters you're using. This is actually a really tricky thing to do. When you are doing multiple perspective or you're introducing characters, set a limit. And if you are going to use a large number of characters, group them and introduce them in segments. But don't keep them as a whole. Okay? Writing a story, and I know this is going out of nowhere, is like going through an RPG. Yeah, best analogy I can come up with. Because you can have the character development, you can have the main story, but don't have all of your characters there at once. If you need to, cut down on the number of characters you have. If you want to, because you have to keep up a certain pacing. Yeah, if you want to introduce a group of characters as individuals, that's fine. And this is actually where it gets a little annoying. Don't try and write one story. Depending on the size of your cast, set up how many characters you're going to use. If you're going to kill characters, figure out how you're going to do that. Figure out how you're going to introduce the character and how it leads up to them. one methodology is you can use retrospective. This way you can have some background characters without introducing them all at once, or you can have other main characters who are not in the main story but are adding to it using retrospective, i.e. memories. Okay? Your character is a top-notch fighter or caster or what have you. Okay? Throughout the story, when they need it, go into a memory. Bring back their mentor. Bring their history to your audience. Now, don't have it be a memory every other page, because then you're just writing two separate stories. If you're going to do that, write the retro perspective first, the history, or write all three stories or however many stories you're doing at the same time. The prequel or the retro perspective can be written at the same time as the main story, because you're going to want to go back and forth between the two. Now, one of the things you can do with that is nuance. Well, not so much nuance. I don't know what the term is, but pretty much you want to be able to have the character, you can have the character recall something from the prequel or the retrospect story in your main story, but because you have them separated and at some point somebody's going to read it, that will give you wiggle room. It won't cut into your pacing, and that's the hard part. And I'm just giving you general ideas. You can do this however you want. Most of the time I do it off of the top of my head, because somehow it's all in there. I just have to figure out the wording and how to explain everything. But you want to set your pace, your tempo, or what have you, whatever you want to call it, and give things time. And if you want to accelerate them, use the retrospect. Okay. Prime example, romance. Even if the romance is not the front line of your story, but it's part of it. Okay. Where do you start? Okay. You're introducing them at a state or a relationship point at the point of no return. The point of no return is where you want to set everything up. Now, does everything have to fall into place right away? No. But the point of no return is where your story actually begins. If you want to develop a relationship between characters, go for it. But if it interferes with your pacing, use retrospect. Like if you want to, like if your pacing's at a point where you can slow down, recap a few things, or bring in new information, use the retrospect. That way you can fill in the blanks. I say that as a concrete truck drives by. Anyway, I think I've rambled on enough. 20 minutes is more than long enough for this. If you guys want to hear more about it, let me know. The same spiel as always. Hit buttons in whatever order you want, however you want to do it, if you want to do it at all. I'm a little out of breath. Leave your thoughts, questions, concerns, ideas, comments, insults, and what have you done in the comment section below. And until next time, I'm Knight's Angel. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a better day. And you too. Peace.